Stimulants are ruining your life. Let me explain why. This all started from, say, the past couple months ago when I just started feeling like a discomfort in just living with myself. So, my mental state, how aligned I feel with myself, my goals, and the actual reality of, my inputs, things of that nature. I felt as if I was getting a bit comfortable. I felt as if I was not leaning more deeply into my fears. And I just kind of felt that I wasn't spending, even though I was working a lot and spending a lot of time on a lot of useful things when it comes for work hours and stuff like that. But when it actually came to, say, the off hours, how I'm spending that time, am I just stimulating myself more? Am I actually trying to get better? Am I reading more? Am I educating myself more? Am I trying to develop my personality more and become more so of this like figure that I aspired to be like? And I felt as if that wasn't the case and it wasn't true. And the reason why is because I guess you can say I zapped myself with a lot of stimulants. So Netflix on weekends, and it was coming to a point where, say, like after a normal work day, I would do it through my dinner period and then even fall asleep to it. Caffeine, I felt like I was always over caffeinated, roughly 400 to 800 milligrams per day. So I would track it and just understand what my mental state was and what's actually going into my body. Alcohol, I tended to notice that on weekends I would maybe have a glass or two or maybe three of like wine and stuff like that. It was never anything absolutely crazy where I was like an alcoholic, but that sometimes here and there, maybe like pot or whatever. But I never really had a super unhealthy relationship with these substances other than nicotine, but I've been free from that for like 2.5 years. And sometimes I would notice that even though I was bulking, I was doing kind of like a moderate clean bulk. So it wasn't, and I noticed that I would give myself leeway on the weekends to kind of get some extra calories and things of that nature. And did want to mention that some of these habits, they started off very innocently in the beginning, and at some point they can kind of say just maybe spiral you down a negative path. So for instance, with alcohol, initially, why like this year I made it a big life improvement to become more social, develop my charisma, my personality, how I converse with just random strangers on the street or just in a store or whatever. So I started going to like bars socially alone and just kind of talking to people, just meeting people, whatever. And that's a great skill that I've developed over, say, the past 7 months. It's an amazing skill. I've got that skill forever now. Now I can do it completely sober, but at the same time, it kind of started off that one innocent little action and eventually developed into this thing where I was on a weekly basis, just kind of like going out just to maybe have a few drinks or maybe doing it at home. So you can see how it kind of just like spiraled you downward. But what you notice that over time is that if you're very ambitious and you have a lot of goals and you are trying to become a better version of yourself, obviously there's going to be probably a deep part of yourself that doesn't feel in alignment with what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, how you feel, and the discomfort of the discrepancy between what you're doing and what you know you can ultimately be doing. And that's ultimately what I was feeling. So at the end of all this, like my nervous system, I felt very shocked. I felt as if I was more reactive to things. I felt things like little minor things were triggering me all the time. I didn't want to say I felt always calm. Like I always felt like I was on the go, go, go. And that's not like a bad thing or anything like that. I still feel like I move very fast with things. I'm very execution orientated and I ship with speed, whatever. But at the end of it, I just felt as if a lot of these substances and things were just controlling me, and I didn't know where to pinpoint like where this discomfort was coming from, because at the core I knew it had something to do with my alignment with myself, what I feel, and who I'm ultimately aspiring to be. And at the end of the day, this is like a prescription I found for myself that works. I don't know if it's going to work for you. I'm just honestly sharing what works for me. And sometimes I do take things to an extreme level because I'd like to consider myself sometimes a very extreme person, but at the same time, this is what's worked for me. I'm just sharing it and my thought process behind it and the philosophy of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then ultimately the results. So I was never really like, when it came to like using these stimulants or whatever I was doing, I had less motivation to cook things, like try new recipes, try new skills, new hobbies, listen to more podcasts, to read more, to explore other sides of my personality. Because as I mentioned before, and kind of the older you get, I noticed that you have less motivation for other things. I mean, I'm still in my 20s, right? I'm 26 right now, but I do kind of have like a little notice of, as I'm kind of getting closer to 30, that if you don't have your health dialed, if you don't have your mental state dialed, if you don't have your mindset dialed, whatever, you're going to start noticing that you have less motivation to do things, especially if all these stimulants and things are zapping you over years, days, months, and all that stuff just compounds. Because if you have this one thing stimulating you and it's zapping your energy and focus and mental clarity, then probably also alcohol is, or weed also is, or say your negative mindset. All these things can compound onto each other and then just becomes like this massive weed brush that is just very hard to see through and just like operate versus just say like a single plant in a plant pot where it's just like it's very focused. There's just like one little plant there and there's no like brushes or any weeds in a way. I know that's kind of like a weird analogy, but that's just the way I kind of see it. Like when you're taking away the stimulants, you're just removing all the weeds that are actually covering up the beautiful plant that you ultimately are at the end of the day. And I remember like recently, like what really provoked this action was this show I was watching on Netflix. I had to do with like these survivors on an island, and there was this one woman that was actually really inspiring, where she said she was always like fearful, she was shy, whatever, and at some point she just decided to swim with sharks, wrestle crocodiles, like all these crazy things. And I was like, damn, I probably need to like add some sort of stimulation into my life to reopen that part of myself that I feel like is muted and is just kind of suppressed. So every once in a while, like I'll do hard things. I've done 75 hard multiple times. I've almost ran a marathon at some point until I got injured. I lift quite often and I try to go and exercise to failure. So I do try to like add heart into my life, but I felt as if there was something much more deeper going on here behind the scenes that was still giving me this sort of discomfort. So I started looking out for potential things I can try or do to potentially solve this. And ultimately at the end, like why I even started this is because I believe that if you tune into say who you want to be, what you ultimately want to attract or manifest or whatever, and I'm not trying to like be woo here, but it's just more so of like if you can literally just like manifest, or say if you can just tune into the character that you're designing, because like if you just look at this as like a video game, all you have to do is a set of actions, a set of inputs, and then you can potentially get a set of outcomes, right? It just increases your probabilities in life to achieve something. So if you can just align with yourself, with that individual, like, oh hey, like I want to be ripped, I'm going to start eating more healthy. I'm going to start tracking my calories. I'm going to start going to sleep earlier, right? I'm going to start hitting the gym and working out very hard at the gym. So when you just start aligning with the character you want to design in your life, right? This game we call life, then what you can ultimately do is you can morph yourself into the person you can ultimately be at the end of the day, whoever it is that you want to be. And fundamentally for myself, the reason why it all started is because there was a misalignment and I felt it, right? There's a misalignment. I'm trying to do this, but I was pretty much like vibrating at this frequency here. But you know what, like when you can kind of match it so your actions of the character who you currently are now on a day-to-day basis just matches the inputs and actions and philosophies of like who you ultimately can be at the end of the day, then that's when you actually start seeing magic, because then the results actually come. And what I want to preface, before we go dive deeper, because I am going to show you like some systems, some potential benefits of like what all this really comes down to. But being overstimulated is really just an escape for something, right? I didn't really understand the process of like processing your emotions, understanding your emotions, and at the end of the day, like all emotions really are, they're just signals. They're just signals and informing you about something going on externally or internally, right? That's basically how our species has evolved and adapted over time. And emotions basically get us to act, right? I think that's what emote literally means. It just means to act, to take some sort of action. So whenever you are escaping from something, is just signal that there's something your body feels that it's taking you, or it's making you take an action to cope with something, some sort of problem, some sort of underlying pain, maybe some childhood trauma, PTSD, whatever. There's probably some sort of data that is informing your body, whether it's internally or externally, about something going on, and then you're taking action to cope with it, right? And that's why it's what pretty much all these stimulants do. They all pretty much just make you escape from something. And I just want to make sure that I mentioned earlier, and just in case if I forgot, because I think I kind of forgot at this point, but over this experiment of like say the past month, of what I completely freed myself from was cheat meals, Netflix, caffeine, weed, and alcohol, all pretty much like within the same span of like the first few days of the month, right? I just went straight up cold turkey. And back to what I was saying here, being overstimulated is just an escape for something. If you cannot live in your skin, your body, your mental space, then something is obviously wrong. And that's literally what I mean by emotions giving you some sort of signal. And if you're covering up what you're ultimately feeling at the end of the day, then that's basically a sort of coping mechanism. You should not fall back to escaping and using the first stimulant that comes to mind, whether it's like caffeine or some sort of cigarette or whatever, because you're just really covering up how you feel. So that pretty much means that there's a problem underlying in your body, your mindset, or your life that hasn't been resolved, and you're just using some sort of substance or stimulant to basically raise your emotion or your mental mood or how you feel on a day-to-day basis, so you don't have to pretty much face that pain. And that's pretty much how we're all motivated on like a human level. We are motivated to escape pain and head more towards pleasure. And when you say you associate this natural human tendency with unhealthy behaviors and habits, then guess what? That's why you have a cigarette addiction. That's why you have a nicotine addiction. That's why you have a caffeine addiction, and you just drink coffee all day. You know what I mean? That's why you have a cheat meal addiction. That's why you like to escape to entertainment at night, right? Or use some sort of porn. I don't know. And just so you understand, like I used to be addicted to nicotine for since I was like 14, 15, 16, I forget, all the way up into my 20s. Like I quit when I was 24, so like pretty much a decade of just smoking constant nicotine. So like Black and Milds, dip, vapes, other stuff, like hookah, you know what I mean? Like all these various different things. And I was cycling through all these different substances to some point I just realized I don't want to do this anymore. And it became more of a net negative in my life. It became more of a net negative in my life than a net positive because I would quit, I would lie about quitting, I would come back, I would relapse, and then it was just this constant cycle of quitting and coming back, quitting and coming back. And at some point, it just takes you to this really low moment in your life where you just don't even know if you can trust yourself anymore. And one thing that I value a lot personally is just my own personal word. Like, so if I say something, I'm going to do it. And that means a lot to me because a man without his word, then, you know, what the hell are you at the end of the day? If you can't carry out a word and say you're going to do something, then your word is pretty much useless. Like you're not even a man at this point. And, you know, that's just kind of like the reality with our society that a lot of people, they fall into these negative actions and then they just realize, oh, damn, my self-esteem is getting all fucked up. Like I can't even trust myself. They're losing confidence in themselves. And just think about it. This substance or whatever you're into is controlling your life, and you don't even have sovereignty over your own body and mindset. And there's a saying of discipline is freedom, and that's so true because if discipline really is freedom, it unlocks everything. Discipline is not a constraint on your life. It is not something that prevents you from living less of a life. If anything, it unlocks more because you can trust yourself more. You can take decisions. You have insane willpower. You can trust that when you say you're going to do something, you're actually going to freaking do it. And my problem with nicotine was that I would always go back and forth between the cycles of quitting and going back, quitting and going back, quitting and going back, where it came to a point where I just hit this absolute maximum low where I was just like, I just can't do this. Like, what I got to do? Like, I did therapy, I did replacements, I did so many things, and nothing just worked out. So at some point, I just realized the solution. You know what? I'm going to get to the solution of like what I ultimately did and what I can help you guys with. But I found a solution at some point, and then I haven't gone back since. Right? I'm 2.5 years clean. Sometimes I get the urges, but they're not as strong anymore. You know what I mean? And honestly, like I think the main thing really here that helped me the most is just my identity. I just don't resonate with that part of myself. There was no other stimulant in my life other than say like caffeine, right? But there isn't all that crazy taboo you get with like smoking, right? But there is no other stimulant in my life that have had a unhealthy relationship. And I understand now that there's like now a big trend with founders and entrepreneurs that, you know, some people, they need stimulants. They need it to feel good, like nicotine and caffeine or something like that. I mean, you know, you guys do you. This is your life at the end of the day. This is just what feels right for me because to me, when I'm coming out here and I'm trying to like become something, I take it to an extreme level. And I really mean like, let's go hardcore with this. Let's really align myself with something where I do feel that true sovereignty over myself, my body, my mind, and nothing actually controls me. I can decide whether or not I can do this or do this never again, or say maybe do this here sparingly, right? Like with caffeine, like coffee, I don't assume I would ever quit it forever, like maybe once in a while, right? But like with nicotine, I know that if I go back to nicotine, I may end up smoking it every single day, and it may become the same constant hard cycle of just quitting it. So like once you make the decision, and that's all it really starts with, once you make the decision to stop and get away from these things, that's when your life starts to change because you start aligning yourself with a new identity, new actions, new things, new behaviors that can actually transform your life and help you become more in tune with the person that you ultimately want to be. Because when you are acting out of this powerful state, things just start happening. You start taking more action. You start actually achieving your goals. You start being more productive and more motivated just to do little simple things. We'll get to that in just a moment, but that's pretty much like my story here with nicotine. And you know, one last thing I want to touch on here on this part is that whenever you're looking to cope with a stimulant, it just means you cannot live with your base reality. That's why you look for something to give you the extra high. I know I mentioned this before, but I really do want to emphasize that all these, they're just trying to like temporarily raise your emotion, your mood, how you feel on a day-to-day basis to escape from what you ultimately feel deep down inside. That's why emotional emotional processing is very hard and difficult for people to do because we suppress a lot of our emotions. But at the end of the day, like when you can actually open up to your emotions, when you can just sit with like that shitty feeling. Like I remember when, say, maybe I got my heart broken from like a relationship, or maybe like I was quitting these stimulants. Like sometimes when you just sit with the emotion, I just felt like there was like this tar, like this black ball of just like a goo inside of my body. And to me that was just like symbolic of like all like the shit, the emotions, the trauma, the pain that I have never processed. And once I just kind of like leaned into it and just like dove deeper into it through my meditation, just kind of like sitting with it, that's when I just kind of learned to embrace that, and then just kind of like act out of a powerful state where I don't no longer need these stimulants or these cover ups to cover how I want to feel, because now I just feel high on life on a daily day basis. I'm healthy, I'm eating healthy, I have a social life, I'm working on things that I feel in tune with that can honestly be better. But I'm aspiring to achieve higher goals, my ambitions, things of that nature. So it's a constant work in process, and this is a journey at the end of the day. And no one's here really alone. And so here's what you can actually expect when you start actually doing this stuff, because some people may be on the fences, may not want to do it. But what you can expect is that the first week is always hell. It's always hell, especially when you're quitting like caffeine or nicotine. It's just absolutely hard to do. And what you look to do is you look for ways to replace that behavior with what you were doing before. So obviously what you want to do is you want to opt in for something that is healthy. You don't want to just fall back for, so say, like, let's say you quit caffeine, or you're just taking a break from caffeine. You don't want to just say substitute that with cheat meals, because I've done that before, right? You want to substitute it with something healthy. Maybe instead do like push-ups, or maybe instead read a book or listen to a podcast, or I don't know, find something else to replace that extra time you would use with that other substance with something healthy. So instead of caffeine, maybe some sort of healthy vegetable drink, or a morning super green drink. I don't know, like figure that out for yourself. So what you want to do is you want to transmute this energy, you want to transmute like these unhealthy behaviors into something positive. Because when you have all this like, I know I'm using like spiritual words here, but it's really just like, I feel like you have like all this energy here when it comes to just say using some sort of stimulant. But if you don't do anything with this, if you don't harness it, or you don't like channel it somewhere, it's just gonna go back into something unhealthy. So instead, channel it towards something healthy. Channel it towards like a new healthy habit or skill or hobby that you want to develop, or a new side of your personality. Maybe develop some sort of new relationship with a new person. Find something else to do other than just defaulting to something unhealthy. And then by week 2 or 3, what you tend to notice is more motivation in simple things: walks, cooking, better sleep, raised self-esteem, more willpower, healthy base mood. And it's because like once you detox yourself from the initial week, like I started seeing benefits like when I just kind of cold turkeyed everything earlier this month. I started seeing benefits in like day 3, 4. Like first few days, I was very sleepy, groggy, kind of pissed off. That's normal, that's expected. But by week 2 and 3, by week 2, you start feeling clean. You start feeling like this natural high in life. You start feeling like you have more energy. You just start feeling as if you can do more things. You feel this great mental clarity. You can start taking stronger action. You can start trusting yourself more, and you start building this self-esteem and confidence that, oh hey, like I'm doing this and I'm just taking it day by day. And this is all compounding, because by week 3 it's really starting to compound now you really do feel the mental clarity. You really do feel more zest for life and this energy that you previously didn't have before, because it was all being covered up by your emotions. And by week 4, at that point, it's just like game over for these stimulants, because now you see like the mask you were wearing with like all the shit, the initial like phase, versus say by week 4, now you just feel like this incredible high on life that you're just so motivated to do things. You want to instead invest this time into healthy things versus unhealthy things. You want to build yourself up more, or like whatever you're into, you just have more motivation because your dopamine is not zapped for just like simple life pleasures that weren't there really before. So like immediately for me, like I just wanted to learn some new recipes. I wanted to develop and become a better dancer. Like I do dancing and stuff like that. So I wanted to learn and become like really good with that. I started being just more social with people I see on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's not like I wasn't social before, but it's just like you have more motivation to like do these things. You start having more confidence in yourself. You just start noticing things in your life that previously you wouldn't really do or have the motivation to do, and now just all of a sudden happening, because you have to find that dopamine. You have to find that dopamine from something, right? And dopamine is really just like this motivation chemical that not doesn't necessarily comes from like when you actually do the thing, but it's from the anticipation of something. So I just have more dopamine from anticipating, oh hey, I'm about to like, dance today and just become better at salsa or swing dancing, or oh hey, I'm about to try this new recipe today. This is awesome. Like I can't wait to try that later. Or oh hey, I'm about to listen to this podcast. It makes sense for this business I'm working on right now. Like yeah, let's do it. Let's listen to it. You know what I mean? And like I said, I already kind of like skimmed through some of these benefits, but you feel good and healthy. You feel more in tune with yourself. You take massive action on your goals. You're more social. You're more motivated to do simple things. Your mental clarity is through the roof, and you're calm, and your nervous system is not shocked. And what I mean by that is because think about it, like when you're always over caffeinated and shit, you always just feel like you just have to do things. You just have to constantly like be in motion and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean like it's unproductive or something, like because you could still be like off the stimulant and still be productive, right? But you just kind of feel as if like something in motion always has to go on. But now I just feel always calm. I don't feel as if like I'm rushing through the day or there's like this like clock inside my head just constantly like running in the background. But I just feel calm. Like I'm gonna do the work. I feel more of like a persistent flow of energy throughout the day. Like no crashes in the morning, but like I can work at the same pace I did in the morning, in the afternoon, the evening. So it's just more constant. You just feel more constant and calm throughout the day versus just like very like explosive in the morning and then you just kind of crash down by the end of the day. So let's talk about like some systems to enable you to actually follow through and stay clean. So obviously the number one thing, I love this quote. I forget who says it or who said it, whatever. I'm just gonna paraphrase. If you change your environment, you can change your behavior, right? I think that's like an Alex Hormozy thing, whatever. But literally, like if you can change your environment, you can change your behavior. So remove all the junk food. If cheat meals is a problem, remove all the junk food. If you have like drugs, cigarettes, or if you have say like I don't know, pipes, whatever, then if you don't want to smoke anymore, then just throw all that shit out, lock it, or I don't know, give it to a friend. What you're ultimately doing here at the end of the day is just adding a bunch of friction, because when you add friction, it makes it incredibly hard to do something. Even if you have like a bad relationship with like say spending or expenses, put some sort of limits on your credit cards, or say maybe only have a certain spending bank account where you can only spend money from there and nothing else. So the more friction you add to anything, then it just makes it very hard to do that old behavior. Like one thing, I mean, I don't really have a problem with social media anymore, but at some point, there were periods in my life where sometimes I'd be on it more or whatever. Like right now, first off, like my Instagram is completely deactivated. I don't even use Instagram right now. Maybe subject to change at some point, but it's just a waste of time for me. But like other apps, like I use X quite frequently, YouTube, and sometimes TikTok for just like work stuff related. But even these things can get in the way. So what you want to do is you want to add some sort of friction if say social media is a problem. So what I did was like I would use an app. I mean, there's plenty of them, but I would use Opal, and what it does is you can lock your phone or certain apps for like a certain amount of time. So then by a certain day or a certain time, then it unlocks and then you can use it. So I tend to do this only like, or I tend to only use social media like maybe once a day for like 15 minutes. Like that's the time block I put in my calendar. Social media for this like 15 minutes, check up with friends, whatever, and that's it. And then rest of the day, I don't even open it. Like I just have no need for it. Like, so why would I open it? So just add the friction. Next thing is social group and communities. And I really want to emphasize this because it's kind of underrated, but there's a lot of truth to it, especially if you don't like open it up and become a little bit vulnerable with say your loved ones, close friends, or even like people online. Like especially like if you're doing it anonymously, like you might as well if you don't want to reveal to close peers around you. So one interesting thing I found out about nicotine was that whenever you're consuming it, it forms the synaptic connections, or like it forms an area of your brain that like I don't know what exactly the word here is. I'm not a neuroscientist, but what it does is like the area it develops this area in your brain where the relationships are formed, right? So that's why you have this sort of neuro association and attachment with your like your vape or your cigarette or whatever, because it just feels like this thing's a part of you. Like are you ever just like smoking your thing, whatever, and you just feel as if like when it leaves your hand, it's just like missing. It's like a missing limb or something like that. That's exactly why. It's because it becomes a sort of extension of yourself and forms in the same area of your brain where relationships form. So that's why it's very difficult to like quit some of these drugs or stimulants, because they just literally feel like extensions of yourself, which is insane to think about. But that's just your brain at the end of the day. So instead, what you want to do is you want to substitute that for healthy relationships, support groups, or like I don't know if you're into like the whole Alcoholics Anonymous type things, like if that's your problem, like go there. Just go to places where people have the same problem, you're doing it with them, so you have some sort of accountability support group. You can let loose some sort of emotional steam, and it's going to help you a lot. And another thing that's underrated, but especially too, like as an adult, as you get older, it becomes very, very hard to build and maintain relationships. So what I do is, I know it's not as crazy as it sounds, is I have a relationship CRM. I literally manage my relationships through a CRM, as crazy as that sounds. But guess what? My relationships this year has been stronger than ever. I've been connecting with a lot of people. I've been reopening relationships. I've been meeting a lot of new random people. I've been going into in-person communities in my local city that I'm in. And this is how I build friends as an adult. And this does gives you a lot of support for whatever you're going through right now, because you have people you can talk to, you can relate with, you can connect with. So it's a huge thing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like, what separates humans from, say, all the other species that made it here through evolution is our ability to connect and unite with communities and groups. So it's this fundamental building block of like what makes life works is just relationships. Another hack I had is just like sleeping through and take frequent naps through the initial period. Like I was taking a lot of naps, I was sleeping a lot because I just felt like this was a shortcut just to kind of just get to the other side and just get this over with. So that's something that helped me a lot. Another thing is that something Tony Robbins, like this is ultimately what got me to quit vaping and nicotine. And ultimately what it is just associating a shit ton of pain with the old habit and a ton of pleasure with where you want to go. So what I would do is I would visualize the most brutal possible things: dying, coughing blood, looking at myself in the mirror and just being very disappointed with who I am. All these very difficult and mentally graphic visualizations just to really register in my nervous system, in my mindset, that this is not what I want to do. Because humans are 3 times more likely to avoid pain and versus go for pleasure. So you might as well leverage that to achieve anything you want in your life. So that's literally what I did to quit nicotine and vaping. I was just associating a shit ton of pain with my old habits, my behaviors, my old identity, and a ton of pleasure with what I ultimately wanted to do. And I believe what this is ultimately called, there's like a science behind it. It's called NLP, neuro linguistic programming. So I think that's literally what the science behind that is. And I had this little note here, and sometimes what it really takes for you to make the change, because sometimes we can want these things but not really take action on it. And trust me, I resonate on that. I understand what you may be going through, but sometimes all it really takes is just hitting rock bottom, and you have to hit a certain pain threshold where, say, enough is enough, and I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna change my life, and that's it. That's rock bottom. And then from there, you just follow the protocol. Associate the pain with what you're trying to escape from, get away with, and then pleasure with ultimately what you're aspiring to be more like. And this one's also underrated, but forming an identity. One thing that helped me a lot when I was quitting vaping and nicotine is forming this identity of I'm no longer this person that smokes nicotine, right? And for that, what I did was I was building this app, like this web app to quit vaping. And it was like this meditation web app. Honestly, the app flopped, but nonetheless, like, it would sound so backward to me if I built this app, if I promoted it, if I marketed it, and I'm the founder and I'm smoking a vape or a nicotine, right? That sounds so backward and just incongruent. Like, that is just more painful to me than smoking. So I formed this identity. It's persisted since then. So I guess it's been working. I mean, I'm the proof right now. But forming an identity, right? And then more recently with just this experiment of what I've been recently doing and all the things that I cut out just to get all this amazing energy and just feeling high in life. Like, what I recently did was, I don't want to say there was like this crazy identity shift or anything like that. It was just more so of like a alignment mismatch of what I'm trying to aspire to and where I'm currently vibrating on, right? Whatever. And then it was just really about removing all the shit that's keeping me here and then just doing the inputs and the actions and having the lifestyle and behaviors of someone that I aspire to be like actually does. And then once I got here, now I just feel in alignment with myself, right? And then everything else just kind of compounds on top of that. So like I said before, but I always usually do cold turkey. I just prefer that. But if you're kind of battling multiple things, then, like caffeine and nicotine, if you quit that at the same time, God bless you, man. Like, God bless you, man. If you're quitting those 2 things, it's like literally getting hit by a goddamn truck. Like, I've done that before. It's extremely hard. I don't recommend it. But just, use some judgment. If it's like caffeine and, I don't know, like cheat meal, that's not bad. You know what I mean? But if you're quitting like some hard drug and caffeine, like, that shit, like, brace yourself. Like, get ready. Another thing I want to mention that is super underrated is boredom. Boredom becomes your best friend. Like, just try staring at a wall for 10 minutes. Most people can because they lose focus, right? And they usually just try to find something to fill up their time with social media, constant vape hits, being over caffeinated, or some sort of cheap dopamine. But boredom, really, it's an ally because when you have nothing to escape to, you can work on yourself. You can read more. You can spend more time with healthy relationships. You can work on your goals, build new skills. So as I quit all these things with, like, say, Netflix, caffeine, whatever, I have to find something to fill up this time. So instead of the caffeine, I can create a healthy shake. Instead of the Netflix, and like I can listen to a podcast before I go to sleep. Instead of the Netflix, maybe I can also read more of my book. You get the point. So really, it's just a ally. And there's nothing really unhealthy to escape to. So instead, you default to productive and healthy actions that are net positive for your life. So keep that one in mind. And the last thing I want to mention is just moving forward. I've done this periodically and I've always experienced the same benefits: insane motivation, amazing clarity, strong willpower. I feel amazing in my body, my mood is healthy, and I'm pretty much happy 90% plus of the time. It's insane. I think that number's more like 95% of the time, right? But that's that. And then compound interest. The more you stack these habits and you just remove things from your life, so like stimulants, drugs, unhealthy habits, whatever, it just compounds. Week by week, it all compounds and you just feel better every single week. It's insane. Like, it's crazy how when you just remove things from your life, your life just gets better. It's weird. And currently, right now, I'm still experimenting because at the end of the day, like I told you earlier before, everyone is different. To me, this feels right. To me, I feel as if I have to go extreme and I have to remove everything because this is what feels in alignment to who I am, what I aspire to be, and just what feels normal to me. I feel comfortable in myself. I feel comfortable in my skin. I feel comfortable with my mental state. But for someone else, they may just maybe need to remove one thing that's like really bothering them. So that's why I said, if something is bothering you, then focus your attention on that thing. But to me, this is what I felt is right for me. And it really makes me question, because if I'm doing this now, why should I go back to my old habits? Should I go back to my old habits? Should I go back to my old habits? Should I not? Should I maybe just do it every like once a year or like every couple months, like what I'm currently doing right now? Or should I actually make this a indefinite lifestyle? So I'm still personally trying to figure that out. But to me, I think it's more so leaning towards the idea of making this like a pretty hardcore lifestyle. One thing I really do like is how Andy Frisella, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's pretty much the creator of 75 Hard. And he created this 75 Hard, which is this, you can look up like what the details of that is, but it's just basically this challenge of exercising and building up your discipline and willpower. And long story short, he had a massive weight problem. He did 75 Hard, solved it, and then he eventually built out this thing called 75 Life or Live 75 Hard. Like, I don't know, but it's like the year-long version extension of 75 Hard. And that's because it feels right for him. So he'll like cycle through on and off like every single year with these difficult challenges because that's what keeps him sharp. That's what keeps him achieving higher things and greater things in life versus just constantly going back and relapsing to your next like unhealthy old habits. And that's why I want to bring you to like the last thing here. Like if these old thoughts and behaviors and actions that your old self did, why the hell would you listen to that voice, right? I try to separate these voices as if it's my lower Jan and higher Jan. So if I'm having a negative thought right now, is this lower Jan talking or is this higher Jan? Probably lower Jan. So I'm gonna be like, okay, fuck that guy. And instead I want to act out of higher Jan. So I think it's a good practice just to simply do an exercise where it's like, okay, this is who I am. This is my old self. These are all the actions my old self would do. These are all the actions my healthy self would do. I'm just gonna do all this shit because this is the lifestyle that is ultimately gonna create my dream reality, what I want to live out of and what I ultimately want to achieve by the end of my life versus this old person, right? This old person got me here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to have the lifestyle that this old version of myself produced. So why would I listen to that old version of myself? So this is just how I try to dissociate myself from like these old thought patterns and things of that nature. And that's why it kind of makes me beg the question, is this potentially for me going to be a long-term lifestyle or is this something just going to be temporary? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. I'm still just trying to figure out what actually makes me tick and work and function optimally for peak performance and just mental clarity. So I'm always razor sharp, but you know, these are just some thoughts, but nonetheless, I hope this input and video was valuable. Let me know what you guys are working on or if there's anything that maybe inspired you to take action on. But other than that, thanks for watching the video and I'll see you in another one. See ya.